To start things off, this video assumes you have obtained Croesus weapon from collection folder and unlocked ultra hard difficulty. If you haven't obtained a Croesus weapon, you can check out the collection folder, which is explained in my previous video. If you haven't unlocked ultra hard difficulty, equip whatever the best thing you have and focus on leveling first, since gearing is not that important before reaching ultra hard difficulty. So, you have finally unlocked ultra hard difficulty with presumably a Croesus weapon and 3 stellar walls. Now, what's the next step? There are a lot of 15-star weapons and 13-star units in the exchange shops, and it might be confusing. Don't worry, here I'll provide the most cost-effective gearing process that I've summarized from my own progression in base PSO2 post-NGS. By the end of this video, you'll know how to obtain and affix gears that can help you make your first step into endgame content. For weapons, it is now a good time to get the Fluxio weapons from doing challenge mission Violent Tremor, or CM3. Why Fluxio weapon? Because it's the second best 15-star weapon series in the game in terms of damage, and its potential can pad you with 100 max PP, which is much more important if you are on Phantom, since Phantom's damage and creep chance is tied to max PP. Then, what is CM3? Since this is a gearing guide, I'll only touch on CM3 briefly. Basically, in CM3 you use predefined class sets to clear 5 maps, and defeating some of the possible bosses in the final map will unlock their corresponding title, which rewards you Fluxio weapon. You can do this in a group or solo, and if you're soloing it, I suggest using it while class for the 50% damage reduction and free healing every 3 minutes. After obtaining a non-harmonizer Fluxio weapon, you can go to Zig and exchange it to any weapon category except the harmonizer at no cost. Fluxio weapon comes with 7-slot stock affixes that are serviceable, and it can hold S1, S4 and S5 S-grade augments or SGAs. I'll talk about some budget options for those SGAs in the later part of this video, where I will be going through the affixing process. If you don't want a Fluxio weapon, the alternative option is to grind for a Darkweave Agile weapon. This weapon is a component of the Lightweave Claws weapon, which is basically the best weapon in the game. To obtain an Agile weapon, you'll need to give Zig 20 Darkstone Deimos, 50 Emerald, 100 Plam materials, 200 X cubes, 200 Lumen Fragment ML, and 30 Ultimate Booster. Darkstone Deimos comes from any content related to the Primordial Darkness, including the Urgent Quest and the Solo Ultimate Quest. Emerald and Plam materials are from dismantling 14-star weapons. You'll have a lot of X cubes by farming Cradle and Divide Quest and exchanging the weapon and unit drops into X cubes. Lumen Fragment ML is from Divide Quest only, and it's best to farm them above stage 21. There are a couple of ways to farm ultimate boosters, but the best way is through Extreme Quest, Risk Realm, available in 4 people or solo version. It can drop more than 10 ultimate boosters per quest if you're lucky, but it does ask you to be decently geared and skilled, especially in the solo version. Alternatively, Divide Quest stage 21 to 25 and 26 to 30 also drop ultimate boosters, and if you are in dire need of more boosters, you can exchange 90 photon boosters or 10 rare weapon badge 5 for 1 ultimate booster. Agile weapon is the 3rd best weapon in the game, supporting S1, S2, S3, S4 SGAs and having a decent potential. I'll also go through some budget SGA choices for Agile later. For units, you may be tempted by the novel units in the Rare Weapon Badge 5 exchange shop. They do give a lot of defense and HP, but they provide very little PP and attack. Also, Rare Weapon Badge 5 is not that easy to come by, especially for those who just hit level 85. Due to these reasons, I won't recommend novel units to anyone. Instead, the unit I'm recommended is a set of Ronya or Former dropped from Ultra Hard Cradle of Darkness. They are super easy to obtain, and you can probably get a full set just by doing Cradle of Darkness once. They provide very decent stats, having more defense, more PP and attack compared to novel units. However, keep in mind that units like Ronya, Former, or any other VR units only work well if you have all 3 of them equipped, and you can mix and match different parts for different stats. By the way, if you want to grind for Trailblazer units, it is still possible, but you'll need to spend a lot of time in 12 people and or 4 people persona triggers, whereas for Ronya and Former, you can just do Cradle once to get a set of units done. Overall, decent stats and zero hassle are the reason why I'm recommending Ronya and Former units. In previous sections, I showed some good weapons and units to get and how to get them. And here, we will be affixing them with some budget options. Before we start affixing, I want you to know about PSO2 Day Boost. During PSO2 Day and PSO2 Premium Day, which are on 1st and 21st of every month depending on time zone, you will get a boosted 15% to each augment during the affixing process. For the rest of this video, I will assume that we are affixing under PSO2 Day Boost. If you are doing it outside of PSO2 Day, you'll have to take account for the risk of failing. If you are using a Fluxio weapon, we'll need to fill its S1, S4 and S5 SGA slots. For S1, the best in-slot option is Augment Will 2, but you can use Aggressive Will 2 on a budget. Escalating Pursuit is usually the go-to option for S4, and can be obtained by exchanging Rare Weapon Badge 5 or clearing Depth 30 of Ultimate Solo Sodom Quest. If you're not there yet, Lifesteal Strike and Photon V Adaptation are other good options. For these S4 augments, you'll need to buy a Val Gunblade or Val Partisan on Player Shop, grind it to plus 35, get the Cronus Eterna Stone from Title Reward, talk to Zig to exchange for Atlas Weapon, and now you have an Atlas Gunblade for Lifesteal Strike or Partisan for Photon V Adaptation. For S5, the option is usually Skill Adept Will, but it's locked behind Rivalate and Claw's Weapons Augment Factor. Luckily, we have Finishing Blow and Augment Bloom as an alternative. Now, let's put these SGAs on the Fluxio. For SGAs in capsule form, we need to affix the Fluxio with some junk weapon fodder, and select the SGA capsule during the affixing process. Make sure you have enough junk affixes to maintain 7 slot. For SGAs as Augment Factor, we'll need to first affix the weapon with Augment Factor to grant the SGA, Augment Factor to itself. Then, we use SGA Transfer to transfer SGA to the Fluxio weapon. Once we have S1, S4 and S5 on our Fluxio weapon, we can upslot it to 8 slots with 2 junk weapon fodder at 7 or 8 slots. Since SGAs always have 100% in affixing process, upslot process shouldn't be too hard as long as you are using Augment Aid 40%, which is obtainable from Weekly Mission and Excube Exchange. After upslotting, we are now affixing real stuff onto our Fluxio weapon. These are my recommended affixes and their setup. Stat 6 Augment Factor comes from respective dim weapons, which are dropped from Divide Quest and Final Lament. Astral Soul Augment Factor comes from Union weapons, and you can find an 8-slot Union weapon on the market at an acceptable price. Verina, Mitra or Shiva Glare are also dropped from Divide Quest and Final Lament. As for Doombreak 3, they are dropped from Cradle of Darkness. Finally, we will use a graceful melee capsule to top it off. If you don't want to farm all these fodders, you can get any of those on Player Shop. Also, if you somehow use 5 Enhancement Cap plus 1 on your Fluxio to make it plus 35, you can swap any of the affixes to Ether Factor, which is Fluxio's Augment Factor. One more thing, if your class is capable of inflicting Gelon, such as Phantom, Hunter or Femel style Luster, you would want to use Basilisk Weapons Augment Factor, which is Phrase Decay, to replace one of the affixes, since Phrase Decay provides 5% damage against Gelon foes. Now let's affix the Darkweave Agile weapon, which supports S1, S2, S3 and S4 SGAs. S1 and S4 options are the same as before. For S2, Precision Will 2 is usually the choice, but on a budget you can use S2 Photonic Will. S3 is also Precision Will 2, but you can use Axiom Will 2 alternatively. As for the upslotting, you'll have an easier time than upslotting Fluxio since there are 4 SGAs instead of 3. This is my recipe for affixing an 8-slot Darkweave weapon. It's basically the same as the Fluxio recipe minus Doombreak 3, so it should be easier to do. Also, the Phase Decay Augment Factor thing still applies for those Gelon classes. Finally, we are affixing our Ronyo or former units. We will be affixing on 6 slots, so make sure you find a set of 6-slot units from all of your cradle drops. This is the recipe for 6-slot budget unit affixes. Notice that this time the main fodder, which will be our Ronyo former unit, has an X-Alice Soul. It can be easily affixed by using 2 units with X-Alice Soul at 6 slots or more. X-Alice Soul fodders can be found in Divide Quests, Final Lament or Player Shop. The same goes for the fodder 1 unit with X-Alice Soul. For the Lesser Might 4 Augment Factor, it comes from other Cradle units, and is a placeholder for any useful Augment Factor that's available to you, such as Novels, Stat 5 or Shell's Sentence Stat. There is an SGA in the recipe, but you may not have any SGA yet. In this case, just affix a random augment as placeholder, and SGA transfer an SGA onto it when you get an SGA later. Verona/Mitra/Shiva Glare is from Divide Quest and Final Lament, and Doombreak 3 is from Cradle, Yotti Yotti Yatta. On a side note, there are other quests that have similar drops as Cradle after they receive the new ultra hard difficulty. These quests include Drawn from Darkness, Mining Base Ending, and Queen's Nightmare Earth Depths. These quests also drop stuff like Doombreak 3 or even catalysts that are used for endgame affixing, so make sure you don't accidentally cube those. Back to the topic, here is one final view of the full recipe. You can find it and other recipes in the links below. By the way, this is also what I used in Global before I got my claws units. These budget Affix Ronia units helped me a ton in my journey of beating up Divide Quest bosses, Sodom and even HTPD. We're finally reaching the end of this video. I didn't cover some 15-star weapons that some of you might have heard about, such as Atlas X, Trailblazer and Riverlate. They were best in slot weapons during their respective time frame. However, at the moment they are not cost-effective, as Croesus pretty much beat Atlas X and Trailblazer at their regular potential, and Riverlate is even harder to get than a claws for anyone starting anew. Anyways, I hope my guide will help you in your journey of reaching endgame content, and in the future I may make a video about how endgame gear looks like in base PSO2. If you have any questions, make sure to leave a comment and I'll answer to the best of my ability. That's it for now, and thanks for watching. Peace.